Okay, everyone, we will begin. Thank you for joining us today. I will introduce myself formally in a moment. Just to say, I'm Matt from Heart Square, and a warm welcome to everybody to Heart Square's webinar, Union Membership in the Digital World. This really has been curated from much recent experience working with several trade unions. And also we know we sit within a network of a lot of collaboration around union matters. So we have certainly been listening to the sector in recent times just about change for unions. If you are joining us from another type of organisation, the topics here are universal. So we really do aim and hope that there is something in here for everyone this morning. I will move then to formal introductions. I'm delighted to say we have a full panel here to support the discussion today, and we'll introduce ourselves now one by one. So more formally, I'm Matt Dunphy, Senior Business Change Consultant from Heart Square. During my time here, I have delivered all of our projects in the sector, be it from business cases towards implementations and post-implementation support. This year, I'm working with two trade unions. I'm delivering digital technology strategy with one and a change management workstream with the other. I'll bring in Helen McGrath, my colleague from Heart Square now. Helen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Matt. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Helen McGrath. I'm a Senior Business Change Consultant at Heart Square. Like Matt, I'm used to working on a range of projects, business cases, requirements gathering, and all the way through to implementation and change streams as well. I'm also working with a couple of unions in the sector, one, again, a digital transformation project, and another in a project sponsor capacity.
Great, and very excited to say we have two Davids joining us outside of Heart Square today. Firstly, David Gilbert-Jones, would you like to introduce yourself very briefly?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm David Gilbert-Jones. I've worked in the not-for-profit sector for the last 34 years with trade unions, membership organisations, professional bodies. I started off as a programmer, then I looked after training, testing, support, consultancy, and I've done that with trade unions in the United Kingdom and in Ireland, North and South. Thanks so much.
Fantastic, David. And last but certainly not least, from the technology partner Trillium, David Spector.
Thank you, Matt. My name's David Spector. I'm Head of Strategy and UX and Digital Services at Trillium. Trillium is an organisation that specialises in the NFP sector, providing digital experiences for members and prospective members. And of course, looking at the holistic view of what needs to be done. It's really the focus is what do people want to get done with digital solutions, and then taking that as the premise of what we suggest. I do not have as much experience as Mr. Gilbert-Jones. I've got about 25 in the digital arena generally, and about 6 of those are in NFP. So I'm catching up with DGJ.
Fantastic. And I will manage the Davids in terms of which way I direct our questions to you today. So we are really hoping we get a good, healthy discussion going. A couple of points on etiquette. I'm sure a lot of people have joined these webinars before with Heart Square or other people. Just to say this is recorded. That offers us the opportunity to share it on our website after today. So indeed, if you want to go back and re-listen to any of the content, it will be up on the website soon. Two ways to support you today. If you're listening and you want to ask us any questions, please do put them through to the Q&A function inside Zoom webinar. And then if you are having any technical difficulties or you need support, I'm crossing my own fingers here, please put a line through to our chat, and we have Joyce and Rebecca in the background who will help you. Finally, then, just to say, if you would keep your microphones on mute throughout the webinar, just so we can share clean content and we can keep the discussion going well. Just a word or two on Heart Square. If you don't know who we are an independent practice consultancy working solely in the not-for-profit sector. We work with lots of types of organisations, obviously trade unions, professional membership bodies, educational institutes, awarding bodies, etc., also charities. We've been established since 2009, and we really do support through that curve from business case to post-implementation change. So without further ado to our agenda, introductions done. In a moment or two, Helen and I will set the scene for us all here today. So we have slides each on some of the themes at the moment for unions, of digital challenges, and really how unions and other organisations are addressing those. We will move on then to our panel session with the Davids and with Helen, just answering some prepared questions I've got here. We will then, of course, open up to any questions you've put through to us and answer as many of those as we can. If we don't get to any, we will make every effort to share some responses after today. And then finally, we've got a bit of a watch this space slide just on a couple of things Hart Square is doing in future. So, a couple of slides from me first then. We wanted to frame this in terms of challenge. We know you may be out there dealing with many challenges at the moment. So common challenges for unions, I think very much this is in the context of the last 18 months of COVID, of remote working, the impact on workers' lives, and of course, things like furlough. So we could have mentioned many, but I've just put 4 up here for our understanding. Urgency, the first one. So of course, at any given time, an organisation will have a number of things it needs to review in terms of its technology and to modernise or to make steps forward. When we talk about urgency here for unions, I suppose we can say 2 things. We have found that if unions or other organisations have built up a burden of multiple systems they needed to modernise before COVID, well, that has only been accelerated now, so the need is much greater. And then, of course, as a union, what unions have experienced is not only are they dealing with their own needs to modernise, but of course, they're in the wider field looking at how digitisation and COVID impact has affected workers' lives and workers' rights. So in terms of getting messages out there and working more digitally, the urgency again has increased in the last 2 years. If we move on to competition then, I like to see this 2 ways, and I think David Spector may come in around this in our panel session. So, of course, an organisation in the not-for-profit sector has to compete for the recruitment and the retention of its members to keep them happy and share benefits. That is always the case. In the recent context, I suppose we have seen the competition for people's attention and action online. So the digital world, as we know, is busy. Social media is busier than ever. And despite GDPR, there is much distraction in terms of what we get in our inboxes and the calls for our attention. So really, it's about how does a union establish its key messages and get them out there so that they are heard and understood and responded to. Third one here is perhaps simpler, spending risks, and namely where to invest. Again, I think David Spector will come on to this one in the panel, but there are many techniques and tools, some you are probably already using, that offer value to your members and are worth the spend. But of course, we are still spending union subs here, and we don't want to waste money. So really it is making choices well and looking at various options. And we've got some tips coming up on that during the session. And then finally, volatility. Anyone who works within change in an organisation or indeed within a union understands volatility. At any given time, a union must deal with the latest topics or calls to action it must make, sharing an indicative vote or needing to get a ballot out quickly, for example. But of course, when you're implementing change in an organisation, changing technology, changing things digitally, that causes a volatility of its own. So I suppose what we're seeing is, how do you balance both the core mission of a union or another type of organisation right now, and the need to make this change technically or digitally? So that's just sharing a little bit of content on challenges. This is another slide from me, and then I will pass over to Helen. So some of these should be more recognisable. How are unions and other organisations dealing with some of the challenges being faced at the moment? Well, genuinely, I think what we are seeing is more of a commitment to strategic planning. And I certainly don't want to dumb down here for the sector. Strategies exist, they are being worked on. I think what we're seeing is more of a focus on really building and developing a digital strategy, a digital technology strategy, and really sharing that and planning that over a number of years. Coupled with that, then, we are seeing bold investment. And I think what that really has shown us is, okay, organizations understand the risks and they are more willing than ever before to put together a multiple year budget and to commit to high budgets in order to get the change done. We know the risks, it is just we are certainly seeing that commitment as well. I think we always experience organizations wanting to give their internal teams skills and to indeed build internal capabilities. So how has that really changed? I think what we're seeing with unions and other organizations is an increasingly sophisticated understanding of what skills to give their teams, particularly a website team, digital teams, or indeed how IT teams are changing now. So things like understanding the agile project methodology for digital development and understanding cloud service, obviously, for anyone working in IT. And of course, when you build your internal capabilities at a union, you are offering the opportunity to do more in-house, even though you may have a healthy ecosystem of third parties. A couple of final ones from me then. I think this is a really exciting one around digital innovation and the use of tools. It is difficult, you know, how can you experiment? How can you have an element of trial and error? Dare I say it, how can there be failure in a safe space at times, and you know, without wasting money and without wasting time? So I think what we're seeing is with things like agile, the use of prototypes, proofs of concept, or just pilot schemes, the ability to take a piece of software or a digital change, work it through with one team, one area of the organization, option out the use of it more fully, and sort of take some chances with it. And I think that's really positive because it gives your staff the opportunity to actually play with something and then implement it fully in a safe way. This next one is really simple. We are seeing a different commitment to change management in the sector and at unions in recent times, you know, really investing in that and using a change management work stream. Unions are good at this. You know, unions members and staff are used to debate, used to interacting and hearing their sharing views and sentiments, and of course, you know, being involved. So in a recent example, in terms of the change management work stream I'm working on, it's really worked well to have working groups, to have a feedback loop, to support a project with change management methodologies. And then finally, then, of course, this is something we'll come on to with Helen today. We are seeing a more nuanced understanding and a greater use of roadmaps, of program structures to deliver projects within one governance, and phased projects. Phased projects aren't new, but I think roadmaps and the use of phased projects together really allows your staff to understand we're not trying to break the organization, we break down what we must change into various phases. And of course, a roadmap is a planning tool. You know, if something must be prioritized above another item, a roadmap really helps there. And David Gilbert-Jones will go on to talk about legacy infrastructure as well. So I'm going to pass over to Helen now. She's going to talk about user experience, digital engagement, and again, beginning to discuss how we address legacy infrastructure. Helen.
Great, thank you, Matt. Would you just move on to the next slide, please? Lovely.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure, actually.
Thanks, Matt. So, yeah, I want to start first of all to talk about easy access. So it's really important that we offer our members, offer all our stakeholders simple user journeys when they're using our digital technology. We all have high expectations when we're using things like websites and apps and portals. We expect things to work really well. We're used to using Amazon or other big high street names. And if these things don't work well, we tend to tell other people as well. So it's important that these user journeys are simple and reflect the quality that we're used to experiencing in other parts of our lives. Once they have been able to log in and are starting to use these technology tools, we need to be thinking about the content. What information do you want your members, do you want your stakeholders to see once they've got there? So it's important to have a content strategy and have good quality information. I'm actually working with a client at the moment, and they're really starting to think about that and thinking about the resourcing of it as well, and thinking about having different content for different channels. So it's great that this organisation is thinking about that ahead before, and you know, their app, for example, isn't launching for a year's time, but they're thinking about that now, which is really you know, good and proactive, and I'm pleased about that as their project manager. Protection. So with GDPR, data protection has never been more important, and we are seeing a growth in people wanting, or clients wanting, to have two-factor authentication. They think they feel that that's really important as they go forward, and they feel an increased responsibility to their members' data. Engagement choices. This is about offering different channels for different types of engagement. So, for example, you might be thinking, we should be thinking about text, for example, if we want a call to action. For example, if we want a member to vote in a ballot, a text is obviously nice and easy and a quick way to respond. And thinking about, you know, emails for other types of engagement. Perhaps we just want people to read and absorb. So it's important to have those different channels for different types of activities. Again, thinking about my earlier client, they're very aware that when they use different channels for different types of content. They were able to articulate that really clearly in a workshop I was at. And their next step is that they're very aware that their senior stakeholders won't be aware of those nuances, and they're going to document that and present that back to them. So it's great that they're able to articulate that and relay that back to their senior stakeholders, which will inform how they engage with their members in future. Voice. So we need to think about how we're going to hear our members' voices. Increasingly, that is digital, getting their feedback online, but we need to be able to understand what they want and how they want to engage with us. And we can think here about focus groups as well, where we can really gather their feedback about how they want to engage with the technology. Digital activism. So we need to strike a balance about how we get people to engage with us. We need to be thinking about how people share information, read information, and the calls to actions that we want people to carry out. It's important as well that we don't forget face-to-face engagement. We need to strike that balance. We know that face-to-face engagement is still really valuable, and we know that as well through COVID, that people need that face-to-face engagement. So it's about picking the right channel for the right activity. Next slide, please, Matt. Lovely, thank you. Mm-hmm. So when we're thinking about the legacy technology, we need to start by thinking about what are our users' needs. So we need to be thinking about requirements gathering. What do people want? How are people doing things now? What do they want from their technology? What are they trying to deliver for their members? When we're gathering those requirements, we need to think about the greatest risks. Where are their failures in systems? Where are their poor processes? Where perhaps is income not being maximised effectively? Where is the greatest need? So we can think about return on investment. Do look at your contracts and your current architecture. Look at where contracts for current systems might be expiring. So where your support contract might be falling off, or where you might be signing up. You might have to sign up for another year's support when really you don't want to be doing that. You know, it's a bigger cost. It's a cost there that you don't want to incur. Do look at your current architecture and make sure that you've got all your systems included. Quite often, when I'm working on business cases for clients, I always, every single time, I will find a system that the senior stakeholders or even the head of IT doesn't even know is in existence. So it's important to get that overview of who is using what by team and for what purpose. Think about your roadmap, as Matt said earlier. It's really useful to have that one-page roadmap so people can see exactly where they're going and how they're going to get there. And that roadmap is really useful as well for senior stakeholders. I was on a project where the project was failing, and it just wasn't going to plan. And the chairman, when I was interviewing the chairman as part of the discovery, he was saying, all I want is a page just showing me what we're going to do and what the time frame is like. So having that one-page roadmap is really helpful for that visibility and that buy-in of what's happening. And then we can plot out all the different types of change that's happening. The roadmap then also will help you plan where you're going to be using projects as opposed to business as usual. So projects, note that their project has a beginning date and an end date. Whereas, something like a website development might be an ongoing project. You might be always doing some elements of website development at all the time. So you would have that as a constant stream of business as usual in your roadmap. So it's important to have those distinctions. Do think about, obviously everyone's very aware of costs and how we manage those, and thinking ahead and anticipating issues. So do make sure that your financial director is on board with what you're doing. Have them as part of your governance, so that you can keep them informed and keep them engaged. We need to be making sure that we don't have unexpected changes in development or unexpected costs. So project governance and change controls is really important here, but a good FD will keep you in line here.
Great, thank you so much. I suppose the points there across all of the Heartsquare content is we understand the balance of really addressing risks, particularly with legacy infrastructure and the cost of that, as Helen says, and of course delivering value early to our members and to our staff. So we'll move on to the panel. We have a little under 25 minutes, and I've got some prepared questions here. Firstly, if I may, I'll start with David Gobert-Jones. Hopefully this is not a taxing question to start us off with. David, how best do unions get started with major digital change? A couple of minutes on that one.
Good morning, everybody. I think you've already started really. Over the last 18 months, trade unions have had to change very quickly with regards to communicating with their members, activists, employers and managers. First, trade unions have a rule book and they're member led, and any changes to that rule book have to be obviously approved, even if they're temporary rule book changes, which have been done in the last 18 months, so that meetings can go online via Zoom or Microsoft Teams. And branch meetings have gone online, regional area meetings, EC meetings went online. Microsoft Teams and Zoom have been used extensively and by trade union head office staff, regional staff, activists and members. I've been involved in training some of those staff, which have been brilliant on Zoom. And they've been using the different options within Zoom for breakout rooms and polling or hands up for voting as well, which has been good. You're also going to have remote workers. So you're going to have things like e-branches, electronic branches, where staff may be offshore or in shipping or in oil rigs or supply boats, and they've been using Zoom extensively to communicate between each other and chat and everything else. So that's been very, very good. So that's a start. That's a very, very good start. Unions 21 and the TUC have a great deal of knowledge and offer services to help trade unions with digital change. And I think those are two important organizations that you should look at. And you can register for Unions 21 or for the TUC to get updates on bulletins and things like that and webinars. Don't be afraid to talk to technology partners or consultants or independent consultants or companies such as Heartsquare. Ask them for advice. Everybody's willing to talk to you. There'll be no charge just to have a chat and talk to you, see what's out there, see what other trade unions are doing, go on their websites, see what they're offering their activists and their members, and also what kind of knowledge base do people have and things like that, or frequently asked questions on their website that members can log into to access and things like that. Engage with the trade union staff at all levels and see what else they would like to have within your systems and things like that. look at a digital roadmap, as Helen and Matt have been talking about, and lay down what you actually want in a new system. What have you got? What do you like? What you don't like? What's on your wish list? Prioritize things like that. Make sure you keep staff on board, which is very important, and keep them involved in the requirements gathering part of the project and any next stages as well. Bring people along for the journey. Just
That's
because
brilliant, David. Thank you so much. I don't want to stop you in your flow, because I will come back to you, because I know that's already an awful lot to share with the group. I wanted to jump back in because you mentioned requirements there, and indeed really collaborating with your staff, your members, your activists to understand requirements. I'll bring David Spector in here. David, on that point, you work a lot to build and develop positive member experience online. Just for you, how may a union understand and prioritise what its users need, and I suppose indeed what its users say they need versus what we think they need?
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, David. That was really informative even for me, and I think I know stuff as well. So I think this has been alluded to throughout, a constant thread of this conversation, which is the focus on the end user. I extend that a little bit more to say not solely on the stakeholders' opinion, because this is where the first place where the end user's requirements might get missed or lost in translation, because you have the requirements of internal stakeholders who see certain things and want certain things because I saw someone else doing it. It's a classic case here. The comparators are always the big guys, right? You know, the Amazons and the Airbnbs. You're looking at these wonderful experiences that you interact with every day, but your budgets aren't anywhere near the same as these players. So the key thing that I say is that to deliver a solution that meets users' needs, you have to ask the users what they need. And those are the people who use it all the time, the thousands, not the dozens, as it were, not the dozens inside, but the thousands outside. The next thing is what I call, and I didn't coin this phrase, but do look it up because it's a really valuable sort of process to go through, is this consideration of what jobs are needed to be done. It's a framework called the Jobs to be Done framework. Fundamentally, what you're saying is every user interacts with a system because they have a task they want to accomplish. And even at the most basic level, if I click on a bit of clickbait, the task I'm accomplishing is probably wasting a bit of time. I'm knowingly doing that because I know what's at the end of it. So whenever you're thinking of how to deliver a solution, don't think about the tech per se, but think about the task that it will allow people to achieve. And that's how you really develop a solution that meets user requirements. The next thing that I think is extremely important and very much of the moment is to make sure your systems are accessible. And this is accessibility from the perspective of people with different levels of physical ability, but beyond that also environmental differences and cultural differences. They all come into the mix when you're talking about having an accessible solution. So fundamentally, you should be able to do everything you need to do. And if you start making things too fancy and whimsical, that compromises sometimes the ability to actually just get a job done. A lot of solutions are limited just because of technology limitations that are legacy. You can compensate for accessibility deficits by putting in really good content. Content's really your best friend when it comes to a system that can't do things a certain way. The best thing to do is to tell people how it can be done before they start doing it. So that saves you a lot of additional pain in terms of dealing with support queries and so on and so forth. And ultimately validate your decisions again through concept testing. I don't mean you have to do a full-blown prototype. If your budget allows, that's really actually a very good place to go, but there are interim measures. Don't go into a full design cycle without doing wireframes so people can at least see what the interface is likely to look like. Before a line of code is written, you'll immediately be able to send that out to some end users, a small group that's representative, and they can validate if you're actually doing this in their best interest. And then finally, before I give you back, because I know we're time limited, always test even after you've gone live. There's a Japanese term called Kaizen, and it means continual improvement. It actually just means improvement, because improvement by its nature is continual anyway. But it's a really good philosophy in the thinking that once we go live, this is actually when the fun starts. We can start to measure the real world interaction, and it will either prove or disprove the things we thought people needed, because we'll see it in cold hard analytics. So always consider that the go live is probably your best opportunity to really understand and make sure you've got some budget and some forethought in terms of making improvements and expecting then they're going to need to be made, because nothing is ever perfect the first day it launches.
Great. Thank you so much, David. I know there's also a lot in there, but I like the idea. I keep thinking about, as David Gobert-Jones said, the the union member who is out on an oil rig and environmentally is in a different place to someone, say, sitting in office or at home. I'm going to broaden this out then, back to David Gobert-Jones, just to say, in your opinion, I'm sure the group here know today, but what, in your opinion, makes a union's user requirements different from those of another organisation, say another professional membership body?
As mentioned before, trade union is governed by its rule book and then by its members. So a trade union is there really to look after the members' interests in the workplace, negotiate agreements with employers on paying conditions, negotiate better working conditions like more holiday or improved health and safety, discuss major changes in the workplace such as health and safety concerns, redundancy, etc. Discuss members' concerns with employers, accompany members to disciplinary and grievance meetings, provide members with legal and financial advice. That could be debt advice, death in service, benefit, work and home issues. So trade union is there for the lifetime of somebody, really, if they join when they're very young. And then they'll retire and they'll offer pension advice at the end. They'll also supply training to people to improve their job requirements, and also training for activists and branch officials so they can help their members. Education facilities, discounted insurance. Trade unions cover everything today, credit unions. So it's very important for the trade union to serve the needs of the members. Some of those are via third parties that they look at and agree to pass information on to if the member agrees and so on. But really, at the end of the day, a trade union covers you from the day you join. I've been a trade union member for 34 years now. I belong to many different unions because of who I've worked for in the past. I've been an honorary member of the old IRSF, Iron Inland Revenue Staff Federation. I'm still a branch secretary in Community Union. And they do. My wife's in Unison. Our daughter's in Beck too. So we're all belong to a different union, but we all use the services of those unions. And it's very important when you don't expect something to happen and it does. So a trade union is there for you. It can be a work issue, it could be a home issue, or whatever the case may be. So I think at the end of the day, because it serves the members' needs in so many different areas, that's why a trade union is different from NFP organisations.
Fantastic. That's great, David. And I've always seen it myself that there's kind of a dormant need of a union member, to receive benefits and to be present and activist. And then there is that urgent need, as you say, if an issue arises, really to have that support. And I like the cradle to grave approach, that in any frame of work or home need, a trade union will be with you if you stay with them throughout your life. Looking more digitally then, David Spector, from your point of view, what makes a union's user requirements different from that of another organisation?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that the user base is typically broader than a lot of other NFP organisations, which kind of have specific niches. What you need to figure into consideration there is it's a wider demographic spread. So digital fluency will vary greatly. There'll be people who are just totally happy with any digital interaction. They use digital all the time, digital natives or whatever other terms we apply to such folk. I don't think it's so much on the basis of age as it used to be. I think, speaking as an old hand in digital, I would consider myself to be completely digitally fluent. Otherwise, I shouldn't be on this call. And I also consider myself to be something of a digital native, though I'm sure people will dispute that. But I remember when vinyl became CDs. So as a consumer, I am a digital native. And there'll surely be people on this call who are like, what's a CD? Not vinyl, because vinyl's had a comeback. But the key thing to consider there is that there's a wide range of users that typically will be a lot broader in terms of the demographic spread and also cultural elements. So taking this, going back to the first point about accessibility,
Yes.
I think another thing that I also notice is that voting and ballots are a much bigger part of what unions do compared to other NFPs that we work with, and the base of people who get involved with that is far larger. Sometimes it could include your entire membership body,
Yes.
as opposed to with some other NFPs might only have voting at an executive level. So this is something that really needs to be taken into consideration. Going back to Helen's point about how do you make it easier for people to submit votes and so on and so forth, and that feeds into also the type of conferences that are run, where a lot of conferences will also be voting opportunities. Those things differ significantly from other typical NFP membership organisations.
Thank you so much. I agree there, particularly on the whole kind of engine of democracy around a union, and complementary points you're making there about, yeah, just the diversity of the union membership. So back to David Gilbert-Jones then. David, when we talk about legacy infrastructure, it can be complicated and difficult to modernise. I've used one example here of, an older system will run out of the ability to support it and the expertise to support it over time if it's not replaced. So just in your opinion, how can unions approach replacing multiple systems within a single programme of work?
As mentioned before, I think you need to talk to technology partners and other consulting companies out there for support on this and help on this. Look at using companies with experience and expertise in supporting you down this path. Also, as I said, the main thing you've got is a single source of data. With legacy systems, as I've known in the past, you may have your main system, and then a lot of data is stored in Excel spreadsheets, Access spreadsheets, on paper, in a diary or whatever. So think about looking at a data amnesty for people when you go down this path and say, look, we know you've all got data out there in different places. Can you let us have that data so that we can create one source of data, one source of truth? Do a requirements gathering exercise, as Helen was talking about earlier on, and you were talking about, and prioritize your requirements. What's good about the existing system? What's not so good about the existing system? What could be done better? What do you need in the new system? And prioritize that. So you may have 2 or 3 phases of a new project. What's in phase 1? What do you actually need? What's in phase 2 that's coming in the next year or 2? And what's in phase 3? Trade unions today obviously use apps as well. So you've got trade union apps. What do you want that app to do? Do you want branch activists to have access to members' data? They may need to go on a proper course to learn how to use the system, and obviously sign up to GDPR and the Data Protection Act to make sure everything's above board. And then do you want those activists to be able to update members' records, look at their data, dissect their data, see where they're very strong or very weak within their employers or their workplaces, yes, and things like that. One of the most important things I think today is not really the technology, it's the relationship you're going to build up with your supplier or your partner, and it is a partnership. Trade unions no longer look to change maybe their systems every 3 to 4 years. It's going to be a long-term relationship with who they're going to go with. And look at the service level agreements you're going to look at, because people's working lives are changing, and how they're going to fit in with the new system as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, David. There's, again, so much in there to consider. I'm working on a roadmap at the moment, and I absolutely agree. We're banging the drum of what are the greatest needs, what is the greatest urgency, and of course, what is going to deliver the greatest value up front, and then obviously run your roadmap from there. And I do agree, there is this reality about working with third parties, technology partners, but certainly being informed in the way you do that, because of these longer term relationships and the way systems are no longer upgraded, but continuously updated. So back to David Spector then. I've got a last question for you, and then one from Helen, and then we will get to our panel's questions. Facing that challenge of spending risks and where to invest, David Spector, what's your advice objectively about the best digital techniques and tools a union may use to provide value for members?
Well, I mean, there's so many to start off with. And the first thing I'd say is to validate why you think you need something. And again, the app got mentioned. I feel it's almost a spent story now with apps. They take a lot more time to develop properly, and then you have to maintain them. So just consider, if you've got an app, how you're going to maintain that in line with all the other digital things you have to maintain. I would say your website, of course, is the most obvious. It's the hub of all activity. And even if people are using apps, a lot of the time, the content is driven from the website anyway. It's using it in the sort of headless CMS context. I think the key thing there is that the opportunities it provides you with a good content management system is to provide personalized content in particular. That's to understand explicitly who the user is, because they've logged in perhaps, or you've got some other method of identifying them as an individual, either implicitly or explicitly. But as a consequence, you deliver content that they are interested in because of past behaviors, and that basically maintains engagement. It's a classic tool used in a lot of the most successful B2C digital environments, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be utilizing it. It puts a bit of extra responsibility on what I think is probably the most important thing, which is a good content strategy. That's not even technology. That's just thinking about how content works for you. If you're looking at, well, apps allow me to do this, that, the other, and a lot of them are about engagement, consider that social media is where people engage by and large in current times. So they already provide great apps. So make your stuff interact with that more effectively, rather than invest in reinventing the wheel. And this all probably gets underlined by one key thing, is that make sure you're measuring things properly, because you're good analytics, including user behavior tracking, for instance, will tell you much more than just looking at what, say, Mashable or Medium is telling you is the next great thing. There are some really good bits of next tech, as it were, for organizations in this sector to potentially start thinking about. Look at accessibility perhaps from a different perspective. It's not all about, do we need to compensate visually for visually impaired people, or do we use voice instead? Voice is becoming a very common interaction mechanism with Alexa, Google, and Apple, Siri, and so on and so forth. So you can really leverage that to great effect, and that's novel, and it actually builds your brand quite significantly, because you're doing something that's really quite future thinking, but really meaningful at the same time. And then there are other elements of that nature. Security could be enhanced. This is where an app might become quite useful if you're using two-factor authentication and things of that nature, and maybe leveraging wallets for people to have their membership details on, but also to gain admission to events and for voting as well. So those are some of the ideas, but I would always say that the predication is a very, very good website that understands what content needs to be delivered to people, and then everything can come from there.
That's wonderful. Thank you, David. And there is a sort of a whole spectrum there of things. And I love the way that you have really anchored it in terms of measuring what people think, user insights. So a final question, then we will move on to the panel. And I am aware of any non-union sort of group members today. So just Helen, from your point of view, that kind of broader advice, we've covered it a couple of times this morning already. How would you advise using a roadmap and the benefits of using phased projects in terms of major change?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I think that the big benefit of a roadmap is that it provides agreement on where you're going, what's going to be included, what you're going to be developing as part of your technology projects, and it just in a page, it just tells you exactly what you're doing and when, and it gives people reassurance and confidence about what's happening. It really helps, as I said before, it really helps with senior stakeholders, they're time poor. They can sometimes be the most difficult to engage with this technology stuff as well, because they're further removed from it. And so giving them on a page and saying, this is what we're going to do, this is when the website's going to happen, this is when CRM's going to happen, this is when the app's going to happen, this is business as usual. It just gives them that clarity and that confidence, and helps them, sign off on the bottom line. The roadmap will help you get the buy-in you need to deliver your project. So it's a really good starting point to think about as part of your business case.
Fantastic, a lovely chimes there alongside your response. I'll press you for one answer on a phased project. We always talk ourselves, don't we, Helen, about the idea of explaining to the users that we are not going to do all of this in one go. Do you want to give a little bit just very quickly on how you've used the phased project approach in your current work with unions?
Yeah, so phasing is it's all about prioritization. It's about chunking the work up. For one, breaking it down. Again, it gives people confidence if you can say this piece of work is happening at this time slot. And it's about prioritization. What do you need first? What do you need first if you're trying to come off some old technology? What do you need first in terms of return on investment? Quite often, with a membership organisation, with unions, it's about making sure the join online application process works, and about being able to deliver subscription. So, automatically that's your core business. You'd expect that to be in a phase one. So it's about thinking about what is your business need, what is your priorities, and just being really clear what's in each phase, and sticking to that as well. So, you don't want to be bringing forward what's in a phase 3 and 4 and go, oh, I've changed my mind now and I want that in a phase 1. So you've got to be strict and stick to that, so that you deliver what's in phase 1 according to the timeline agreed.
That's really brilliant. Thank you so much. I know you're going to dive straight away into our Q&A box. We are now opening up to discuss any questions coming through. I am watching my own clock here, so a little under 15 minutes before we let you go this morning. And I think I will give a coaching note to our panel here just for punchy answers. We want to try and get through as many of these as we can. So Helen, over to you to sort of parse out the questions that are there.
Yes, great. Thanks, Matt. So I'm going to give this first one to David Gilbert-Jones. The question is, other than those you have just mentioned, are there any upcoming challenges that you see unions will have to face in the future?
Yes, really. I think in the future, the way unions are going to interact and engage with members, be very precise in the engagement of members. I think how they're going to retain membership, how they're going to recruit younger members is going to be a bit of a problem in the future. I think you need to find out what non-members of a union would like to have in a union, and what services they supply and everything else. Some people will join a union and never use the services. Other people will join, as I said before, and become very active very quickly. So engagement scoring is very important. In the future, how you interact with people, social media, as David and Matt and Helen have spoken about in the past just now. So yeah, I think the way membership cards are given out, are you going to have physical cards? Are you going to have digital cards? Do you have physical membership packs or digital packs, membership packs as well? All that's going to be important in the future. And how you look at the data you've got, what kind of data you've got, and how you analyze that data and make the best use of that data to communicate with your members. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that, David. Next one for David Spector. What are the best way to understand users' needs?
Ask them. Matt asked for a punchy answer. That's really it. Ask them.
You may elaborate somewhat, David.
Workshops.
I mean, there's so many ways to look. You mentioned, Helen, very early on about the idea of focus groups and surveys, and I know people are probably groaning at that thought, oh, not another survey, but they really do help if people interact with them. I think another thing is worth looking at is what are the things that people have complained about historically. That's usually a really good guide to what you should be thinking about including in the future, because you'll see some common threads that are recurring when you look into the past of, say, people say, why can't I do this? Or I thought it would be able to do that. At some point you recognize, yeah, it should probably do that thing. So why don't we invest in that? So really it's listening to the users. The first thing, they'll always tell you when something's wrong. If something's great, you probably don't hear about it, which is a good thing.
Great. Thank you. Helen, others coming through? Just double checking we've still got Helen there. If not, let me jump in.
I can see movement.
Yeah, so oh, hi Helen, how are you? We've got other questions coming through?
Here, sorry. Yeah, so Bear with me a second. Yeah, let's get the next question. The questions are coming in thick and fast. So our next question, our greatest need is to create really engaging networking amongst members. They want it, but in reality, the sign-ups seem to show it's a really hard area to grow effectively. It's an issue as this has a bearing on galvanizing members, lobbying together, etc. Are there some new digital examples to really meaningful networking that really do create change? I'm going to give that one again to David Spector.
It's a great question. I think Mr. Gobert-Jones could come in here as well.
Yeah.
Ultimately, there's lots of software that supports this concept of facilitating networks online. Engaging with people is the big challenge, because it also requires a lot of moderation to an extent. If you think about the risks in terms of letting people just say things amongst themselves and create little splinter groups and so on and so forth. So I think the challenge there is really delivering why should I be involved with this and make sure it's not an echo chamber. And that's one of the high risks of these types of things.
I think it has to be monitored as well, as you said, David. So all the chat rooms and everything else and social media has to be monitored, just to make sure everything's above board and within the rules of the union. Fantastic.
Helen, other ones coming through? I've spotted one there I might like to cover, but anything you can see?
Yeah, I've got one for you, Matt. So there's lots of options you mentioned here, but how do we get agreement on the priorities, as we can't do everything?
Thank you so much. That was the one I saw. And thank you to the question asker there. It is a challenge, and I'll be very honest, when Hart Square runs a requirements workshop, it's collaborative and it collects, so we do listen to pain points currently, as David Spector says, what's the complaint issues? And then we do get the user level view of what people believe they need in future. Of course, that's objectified. We don't want to say, well, if my system currently did this, anyone who's worked on requirements knows you make them objective. As a system admin, I need to do this in order that I can achieve this outcome. In terms of cutting through opinion and getting to agreement, I think you need a sort of a triage point. So after you've done the workshop collaboration, you really do need to order that as an analysis in terms of, can you roll up certain themes? Can you look to highlight things that, as with some insight, are the most important requirements, and indeed just technically are required versus what is needed and what is a business need. And then I think you can really use another level, which is an element of moderation from a group above the workshop group. Usually, again, from Hart Square's experience, when we run a requirements exercise, it then goes on to say, how do we build an invitation to tender, and how do we share those requirements with potential technology partners? So you usually want to congregate a senior leadership group or an oversight group to really do that exercise of what is a priority for phase one, what is most urgent, and then what can follow. And indeed, what is sort of known as a wish or a want, but would need much more scoping in future. So it can sort of be a future requirement. And I think, if you've done that level of scrutiny, just communicate back then to the workshop group. So really get two levels of agreement, but where there are harder lines on what the organization needs versus an individual, or indeed a membership group, communicate back so they understand that. Hopefully that helps, Helen.
Yeah, good one, Matt. I think I've got time for at least one more question.
One more, and then we'll start to move towards a close.
Yeah, so let's see if we can maybe, how many responses we can get to this one. So this is a good one. Our main issue is getting members to engage digitally. Our open rate of emails is higher than average. However, getting members to engage with the content is lower. What would you recommend to get members to engage more with email content?
I love this question, because I'm dealing with it right now. And actually, there are a couple of things. One is, this is where there are tools that can really help you. So if you've got a good email service provision tool, a campaign tool of some description, I'm not going to name any names, there are enough of them you'll be aware of. They allow you to build really meaningful programs to identify what people have been interested in the past, based on also CRM data. So you're getting this single source of truth of engagement that the other David has spoken about. You're feeding that into how you segment your emails and send them based on that understanding. that creates a personalized element to the content. The next thing is, it really is about the content. You're saying, whoever's posted this wonderful question is saying that the open rate is good, which is your major challenge. So ultimately it's the thing that I see once I've opened that, and maybe make it just tell a bit more of a story, rather than one can get quite formulaic when it comes to sending out emails repeatedly, because you have a formula that works, you've got a template that looks okay, so you kind of just do the same things, and what you're doing is fundamentally driving people to a piece of content that lives somewhere else. Well, if you're going to do that, make sure you tell a lovely story that carries them through, so when they get to the destination, it continues the story and engages them further, hopefully with some sort of meaningful call to action at the end of that.
Yeah, targeted emailing, depending on the person's, maybe the subject that they teach, maybe the job they do, maybe their age and so on. So targeted emailing, yeah, very, very important.
Fantastic.
Matt, I was wondering as well, if it's about choosing the right channel, back to some of the conversations we've had at the beginning, and about what David Spector was saying about, you know, you've got to be careful, you've got to be really clear what channel you're using for what purpose. So it's not just about email, is it?
Indeed, and I might take this back then, as we are on the home straight. Anyone who hasn't had questions answered, we will share a way to get you responses. And thank you for some of those coming through. They're really interesting. So yeah, I think it's ever present on my mind that union members are out there doing their jobs, you know. They are in the workplace, they are busy, they are in the field, they are more at home now than they ever were. And as we say, if we go back to that point, Helen, as you say, of distraction and really answering a key call to action, as David Spector says, you're reading content to take in action or to go somewhere else and read more. I think it is just understanding your content strategy and going, what do we use for what purpose? And then re-optimizing the use of that with good digital tools, and bringing it back to that point of, do the teams internally, both our digital hub, our website team, our content writers, and the broader staff who are building email templates, for example, did they understand the channels we use and how we're actually targeting engagement in the other ways? And I'll finish on this because there's so much good content out there at the moment. Unions 21, TUC Digital, other collaboration forums. We are just seeing that engagement is a lot more via thought leadership now. Sort of getting someone to read a blog, get interested on a train, at home, and then learn more. So I think that's worth always remembering, whether it's via your social media or via your website. Thank you so much for that. We are going to look to close. I have really enjoyed the discussions here today. So if I may just share a couple of things. We have our feedback survey coming through. Please do respond to that. We talked so much about views and sentiments this morning. We do want yours, and it helps us learn. Whether you're part of a union at the moment or you're part of another organisation. Probably moving on from that, we share an awful lot of content. As I've said, our thought leadership strategy has changed in the last 2 years. So we're doing an awful lot more to talk about the work we do and to talk about the discussions we're having. So please do get yourself signed up to our newsletter, join our LinkedIn, our Twitter feed, and you'll see various things in terms of just ideas we're sharing, or a sounding board for the things we're hearing. We will do the same out there in the union network. And then finally, a sneak preview. We intend to do another union webinar in the spring next year. We do think there's enough conversation, and in the projects we're running will be progressed several months more. So please do keep an eye out for a second union webinar event in the spring. It only leaves me to say thank you so much for joining us today. Do, as I say, keep in touch with us on social media and join our webinars again. Thank you to David Gobert-Jones and to David Spector. They are available on social media, particularly LinkedIn. And just to say, yeah, we will be putting this up on the website soon. So if you do want to recap on that, do join the website to have a look. And as I say, if we've missed any questions this morning, we will certainly look to get a response shared in some format. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye now.